really excited to have 3 of those speakers back this year. I'm excited for them to tell you their stories and talk about the things that they worked on. First is Gina Nagel, and next we have Sara Andrews, and finally Spencer Williams. And I'll let them introduce themselves and tell you about their companies. And if we can, Colin, do you want to give me some help? We'll bring 3 chairs up here, but I'll welcome those panelists.
Great, thanks. Thank you very much. I guess I'm starting off. So what we're going to talk about today is how I made progress since this conference last September, was it? And I don't know if we're going to put slides up or not. Are we putting slides up while we talk, or is it a panel first? Holly, what do you think? Okay. So I don't know if you all have slides, but we want to do that first, Chris? Okay. So if you wouldn't mind putting those up, that'd be great. Oh, those. I was wondering. I thought you were first. Do you want to go first?
And I apologize. Some of you already saw these slides last year, but it'll make sense in a second. But since the conference last year, my work has changed greatly because of the conference. And I mean, the story kind of starts out the same as last year. These are my grandparents branding after their honeymoon sometime in the 40s. And they ranched north of Big Timber. And you can go to the next slide. Oh, thanks. Another one of the old ones from how they used to hay. Oh, and this did not format very well. So basically last year, I came here and said for my company, Bumble Root, we wanted to start creating a regenerative meat and lentil snack, but we wanted to use the producers in the room, the producers we knew in Montana, and there was not an aggregated way to do that. And we started talking to all the producers and figuring out, when we were talking to the retailers, they really wanted certification and verification to be able to say that meat was regenerative. And as we were saying we needed to gather this, we had Spencer saying, well, we want the organ meat. And we had Zach, Gina's co-founder, here saying, well, we want the hides and we want these other pieces, and other half processing who was here who wanted the hides. And we quickly realized there was something bigger here. So in December, after the conference, we got 31 people together in a room in Big Timber, and we laid out of what the gaps were and what we needed to build that middle infrastructure that would be needed to connect consumers who wanted regenerative meat and other parts of the animal. And so part of this is to increase our co-packing capacity along with Brian Engel and Big Timber. So we had this group that came together, and this is the vision that was laid out. Aggregation, storage, fulfillment, logistics to how do we move all parts of the animal around from the processors that we'd be working with, the value-added processing. And then if we were going to be doing all of that, there's a lot of information to be gathered. There's information, there's storytelling that can be done, which Gina will talk about here in a second. There is pricing, there's just data that can start being collected. There's a way to get people together physically. And so we view the Center of Excellence as being sort of the nonprofit part of this vision that WSE is a part of. But we already, so fast forward from that meeting in December, we have a really amazing steering committee that include many people in this room. We've been working with other half processing on the GRAS standard to work to get the feedback from Montana producers on the finishing standards, but that's the standard we plan to use to be kind of the umbrella above these producers. We have been brought into grants. We've had investors come forward. So it's all moving forward really fast. If you're a producer in the room, I'd love to talk to you because we have a survey on finishing that in collection of your practices. If you'd like to be involved in this, we'd love to have you. On the distribution and aggregation side, that the plan is for that to be a co-op where any producer who participates will be getting equity. So So now I feel like I'm just babbling. And then on the retail side, we have 2 large national retailers who are wanting to start nationally launched products with this aggregation. So that's been pretty exciting. So we're going to be starting with probably between 2,000 to 3,000 animals at the beginning, just based on the demand from those 2 retailers that we'll have to source. So that's what's happened since last year on my side. And it's just been so great to continue conversations with Spencer and Gina and Brian Engel and WSE and so many people in this room on this. And if you want to know more, just please find me. We'd love to have you involved.
Okay. So my slides, I don't really need slides, but okay. So I'll just get started. So I am Gina Nagel. I worked at Applegate, the nation's leading brand of natural and organic meat, for 17 years. So I saw that brand go from a little startup to something that was sold in 2015 for almost $1 billion. So I have a lot of knowledge about how to grow a meat business. And I had the privilege of being able to lead the regenerative sourcing strategy at Applegate and then our parent company, Hormel Foods. And it was in doing that work and bringing a regenerative product to market that I really understood that there are needs here that can't be met inside of a corporation. So even though Applegate, Hormel, they have all the intention and integrity of wanting to do the right thing and build supply chains that are fair and equitable and all of that, this requires a level of collaboration that is frankly just not even possible in an organization that's publicly traded. There's antitrust laws that preclude real, true collaboration. So and then also too, in launching this product, we launched a regenerative hot dog nationally. In the process of bringing that to market, I realized, that's actually how I met my co-founder, my partner, Zach Angelini, who spoke here last year from Timberland. We had we found and aggregated a supply of regenerative beef in California for our hot dogs. And he's like, wow, what are you doing with the hides? And I'm like, I honestly have never thought about a hide in my entire 17 years working in the meat business, because it's always been focused on finding a home for every part of the meat. And the hides were kind of an afterthought. But in meeting Zach and in working with Timberland and selling them our hides for their regenerative boots, we realized, wow, we don't have to bear all the risk in this transition. We can help share the cost for the farmers to get their data collection that we were requiring for them to, we could pay for their certification, we could do marketing together, and we really realized, wow, there's a huge opportunity here for collaboration. Even like to what Spencer's doing, we found a pet food company to take the organ meat, and we found literally a home for every single solitary part of that animal. So the farmer ended up making more money. Everyone got better cost of goods from that full utilization and efficiency. And it just seemed like this seems to be the model that I'm interested in going forward, because there's enormous opportunity. So the other aspect of this is, up until this point, corporations have made the food system, created it, and given the public access to it. And now, call me delusional, I think it's the first time in history we have the opportunity to create a regionalized regenerative food system and give corporations access to it. It has to be built in service of the public good. Our food system cannot be built by corporate America. But corporate America has a very important role to play in this whole thing, because they are huge, consistent purchasers of product. And that's what I saw when our farm network had a consistent outlet for all of their meat. especially their trim, which is what can really inhibit scale. They were able to make plans. They were able to think forward. They had some sort of, concrete stability that they could operate from. And honestly, that's what companies are good at doing. They're not good at building things, but they are good at coming to the table and purchasing things that are already figured out. So fast forward, that is why I left Applegate in April to join Zach and start a public benefit company that will ultimately be a perpetual purpose trust, very similar to what Patagonia has done, so that this company can never be purchased, and it operates 100% in service of the public good, working to aggregate supply, aggregate demand, get the data, and match the customers together. You can fast forward this or just flip it. Oh, thank you. So yeah, that's the vision, to design a hyper-collaborative, regionalized, regenerative food system in service of the public good. So this is also what I discovered. There's a lot of talk all the time about the missing middle. Like, the middle is missing. We need mid-sized infrastructure. Mid-sized infrastructure is the solution. But if you look around, there's a lot of mid-sized infrastructure rusting across the country and others that are just barely in business. So it's not just the infrastructure. In fact, it's the optimization that's important, because you can build it and they might not necessarily come, right? If you have 200 animals coming through a processing plant, you need customers for every single part of that animal coming out on the other side. And if you don't have that, that's the inefficiency, that's the trouble, that's where it starts. So right now, Zach and I are working with a lot of brands. I'm still working with Applegate and Hormel as a consultant. We're working with Timberland and VF Corporation, Nike, some other luxury fashion brands, all interested in doing this. But I think what has to happen, first, which is not what I've seen happen in any of the projects up until this point, is the demand has to be there. If the demand is there, the supply can confidently come behind it. So this is what we do. What we have is, what we see ourselves as the real missing middle. We have brands on the demand side that need a scaled, consistent supply of product. Right now, we have a very siloed, disconnected supply chains, right? Demand, they need efficiency. They need data for their scope 3 reporting to their shareholders. They need to know that customers and consumers are going to understand what they're selling. On the supply side, though, we have inconsistent supply. It's inefficient. It doesn't have the data, and we don't have consumer awareness right now. So what we want to do in the middle is aggregate supply, aggregate demand to achieve full carcass utilization, get the data that's needed by these brands, and develop the marketing content. So to develop real marketing content to the level that the public is accustomed to, there is a bar that people, you just can't go out there anymore and haphazardly market your things. People are used to a certain aesthetic and a certain level of branding and marketing and visual aesthetic. So we want to be able to do that, like, the tide raises all boats. We want to be able to create that content, put that content out there at a very, elevated level that no one individual could do on their own, but we could do, and everyone could benefit from it. So it's not necessarily a cooperative model, but it is a model in which we are looking at things holistically so that everyone in the system can be enabled and empowered and benefit from what we're doing. So this is what it looks like. Public good provisions in the middle, us handling the marketing and communications, packaging the data, finding all of the customers for full carcass utilization, working with the processors, and creating and working with a regenerative framework that is flexible and doesn't inhibit scale. and that everyone can agree upon. And we're very interested in GRAS. They'll be talking today, the Generalized Regenerative Ag Sourcing Specification. So that's me. That's what I do. I feel like I just talked a really long time, but I'm really interested in meeting everyone, talking to everyone, sharing your insights with me. That's how I can better inform what I do. So thank you for having me here.
Thanks, Gina. All right, so I'm happy to share a little bit about what we've been doing at West Paw since this last get together last year, which is really helpful. And to give you a little background, I've got some slides to just give you kind of a sense of what West Paw does. But from my personal background, I grew up in Columbus, where my family homesteaded, and so grew up in that community. Really proud to see ranchers and farmers getting together like these kind of conferences to figure out how we all solve for tomorrow and figure out some solutions to help move our economy forward and help preserve our land. So thinking about regenerative ag and how does that play into what West Paw does is maybe some people would wonder, well, how did we get into this business? And so just a little bit about the company. Maybe I'll just use that and we'll click through this real quick, but just to give you a sense of what we are. So we have a vision at the company that is really clear to us, that we innovate to connect people and pets, and we do that in pursuit of a healthier planet. And I think as we think about what does a healthier world look like, it's many, many things, but we really are focused on this idea of connection. And so being able to share how much this conference helped us last year through connection is right in our core and right at our purpose. When we figure out those ways in which we can use our business as a force for good, we think, oh man, yeah, we can definitely do a better job for the economy, for our team members in our company, and for our customers. And so a little bit about our company. As you can see, we've been doing this work for about 27 years. I started the company when I was 23. I wanted to make an impact through making pet products. It was specifically sewn dog and cat toys at the beginning. And so we've changed a lot over all the years. As the markets changed and our opportunities changed, we started off in Livingston sewing literally squeaky dog toys and catnip-filled cat toys. And then we got into injection molded toys for more durability using sustainable materials. Then we got into the idea of like treat toys. And we thought, oh man, wouldn't it be great to have our own kind of treats? And so we started imagining a vision around creating treats. And that's what brings us to this conference today. We have two factories. One's in Bozeman. That's our original location. We're no longer operating in Livingston. That was our first 2 years. Then we moved to Bozeman. And then we have a second facility up in Columbia Falls. We've got about 75 or so employees who work in everything from the design of the product to the manufacturing to the shipping and logistics. It's a really cool environment because manufacturing is something I'm really passionate about because we have a diversity of people who get to work in that company. We also, as far as our markets go, I think this is part of what's interesting. Is our market is outside of Montana. Montana is about 1.5% of our total sales, and so we're selling to the independent pet specialty stores up and down the main streets throughout America and Canada. We sell to the bigger stores as well, the Amazons, the Whole Foods or Petco, and so our market reach has grown over the years. But we've done that consistent growth. We're 100% privately owned. We bank traditionally, and we want to stay that way. We want to stay independent so we can create our future. And so I want to talk today about the power of three. We think about like how does a dog and a toy and a treat fit together? And so as we think about our journey in treats, it's really been starting off with this vision. We thought we would just simply buy some organ meat in Montana. We would simply process them into treats, and we'd sell them everywhere in the country. And that was the vision, I think, about 6 years ago. Boy, that's really hard to do. We were schooled. The supply chain is really hard to figure out. And so after working on that for a little while, we realized we couldn't aggregate the kind of material we were looking for. There wasn't the scale and supply here in Montana. And so we started this line of treats that you can see in the picture. That's all made for us to our specifications in two factories, one in Colorado and one in Texas. We use air dry in Colorado and freeze drying technology in Texas. And this allows us to really supply, a portion of our retailers. We're in about 2,000 stores with this, whereas our regular product line is in about 6,000 stores. So we're growing in market share significantly, but it's still only a fraction of our total retailer base. While we export our other products to 40 countries, we don't export treats at all right now due to some hurdles and regulation, but it's this constraint on supply that is one of our biggest challenges. And it was interesting when Sue said, is anybody, what did you say, expert at marketing regenerative? Carrie and I kind of turned to each other and we snickered and we thought, we're not expert. We are learning as we're going. So we didn't stand up. But we're trying to figure this out as we continue to grow. And so what I guess I wanted to come to as far as like where we're at, why make a Montana treat? So we've got these treats that are selling nationwide. They're using organ meat, which was our founding strategy. All of our treats use that product, which we think is super important because it's a waste stream. We see that throughout the nation, and it's crazy to have this as a waste. That's costly economically, it's costly environmentally, and by the way, dogs love it. So like we can solve this, right? And so why create a Montana treat? Well, we think coming back to this, like there's 3 legs of the stool we can put together: Montana raised, Montana processed, and regenerative. And I think we're at the breakthrough, and that's what I want to share with you today, is that we've been working hard on this. You know, if we can tell the local rancher story, that will help to really inspire the consumer, help connect them to the land, help them connect them to the family, and why their choice is actually making a big difference. And that is something we really want to do on package. We also really want to focus on the second piece about like how do we partner with producers to reduce waste. You know, I've been to a lot of processing facilities throughout Montana. Chris and I cruised down to even Cody, Wyoming to see that many years ago to try to figure out if we could do that. There's a lot of offal that's going to waste. How do we stop that? And working with Brian Engel at Pioneer Meats has been fantastic because we think we have a path to not only utilize the material that's coming through his facility, but then to the point of aggregating supply. And this is what Sarah's working on too, is how do we aggregate the supply to get more scale? So other processors can send us their offal and we can get that processed into treats. And then the third piece about this is how do we educate? And this is where Sue's question was really key. We're not expert in educating on regenerative. We're not expert at educating on why supporting local ranches in Montana is really important, but we're going to learn how to do that really well. And I think we can crack that nut because we have to be able to convince several audiences of this important work. We have to convince the consumer, right? They're going to spend a little bit more for our product, and our product is generally more expensive than what might be, say, imported from overseas, whether that's a dog toy or a treat. We don't mind being more expensive, higher quality product, but we have to educate them on the why of the product. What is the difference for buying a Montana product, a regenerative product? We have to get good at that story. We also need to educate them on some of these principles around regenerative, you know, the soil health principles, the animal husbandry, grazing management, all these water diversity of biohabitat. We want to be able to tell those stories. And Carrie, who's here at the conference with me, it's like we can't have a package that's like a 4x6 foot sheet of paper. Like it has to fit on the bag, Spencer. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's tough. So we got to get really good at these stories. And I think that's one of the things we want to talk with you all about today and tomorrow. Our dogs love our treats. And so as we think about these things, we think about now, how do we build the supply? And so if we think we can elevate a premium treat and sell that in a restricted marketplace, we don't think we have enough Montana supply of regenerative to go nationwide. And that's okay. We've got our partners and our sales team focused on where can we sell that product. It may not be in all the stores right away. And that's okay, because we're all about building change and building a movement as we continue to grow for good. And so as we think about the supply of Montana product, what could a product look like that would actually fit our toys? Would there be something that would be a form factor? And we started working on this many years ago. I think maybe 2-3 years ago, Carrie, down in Colorado, is could we make a stick that would work in one of our toys? And would that work really well for us? And we were trying to do that with some bison heart, I believe it was. It was looking quite costly, and again, that made us wonder, what else could we use? How do we look at the whole animal? Is there other parts of the animal that we could be doing? And so this idea came to figure out, is there a way to use more of the offal instead of just these single proteins that we're currently selling, so to blend that together in a stick. And that's what we've come to. And in working with with Brian Engold at Pioneer, and he's been real helpful in running a bunch of samples for us and letting us test a lot of different formulations. We're at a place where we can maybe get this partnership really launched. We think WSE is a huge piece of this puzzle for us. We think that WSE's work is not only to help drive change in Montana and nationwide, but also to help us have a sourcing standard. And you might ask, why do you need a sourcing standard? We also have to convince our retailers that this is a true, authentic product, right? We can't just go out there, and you've heard of people saying like greenwashing or overselling their story. We need to work with partners ethically in a way that we can substantiate the claims that we're making on pack, on our website, and at our trade shows. And by partnering with WSE, we've developed a sourcing guideline using regenerative practices that help us understand from whom we can purchase and how does that supply substantiate our claims. So imagine we're sitting in front of a retailer, whether they're an independent owned shop, and everybody who walks in their store and says, what's the best dog treats? And they're telling that customer, trust West Paw. We need to give that sole proprietor confidence in our product. If we're sitting in a corporate office with a big CSR representative from, say, Petco or PetSmart, and they look across us and say, how do you know this is regenerative? How do I know what I'm paying for is worth the extra price? We think that this sourcing guidelines can be really, really important for us. So by partnering with WSE, we think we're at the cusp of solving that supply chain issue. We also have the ability to standardize this supply. And so standardizing the way in which the offal's cut, how is it aggregated throughout Montana from different processors and gotten over to Brian's shop in Big Timber. Those are big breakthroughs, and we're just right there. We think if we get this all pulled together this fall, we'll be in market in March. And that would be huge for us. It'd be a real opportunity for us to grow. But I think also it's an economic opportunity for all the processors and producers who are bringing this great product to us. So that's a little bit about where we think we're at. The toy that you can see on the right-hand side is the Quizzle product that we've been in market for many, many years. It's an award-winning product of ours, and we're trying to make this beef stick work in that toy. We've used it for what's called a bully stick as a product that has worked in a nationwide marketplace really, really well. Wouldn't it be cool to have 100% Montana product being sold alongside that nationwide? And wouldn't that be cool because it's not only using a little bit of the animal, but it's actually using lung, spleen, well, we got liver, we got some trim in there, Brian. I'm trying to think what else. We got some Montana lentil in there. Kidneys are in there. So by expanding the amount of protein that goes into there, we are able to reduce the head count. And what I mean by that is if we use our heart-only products, we're needing 4,000 or 5,000 head, Lamont, is that about right? By increasing the offal and blending that together, we're getting down to 700, 800 head. And now that's something that we can start with in Montana. And that is just thinking about the constraints and leveraging those constraints to think about what is the innovation and how does that innovation then unlock the potential of growth, so an impact. So that's a little bit about what we do. As we think about this business, we think about how do we grow for good, and that's been part of our journey. And we couldn't do it without partnerships and friendship like this. When Chris and I first chatted, I think it was 2017 or 18. And he's been so supportive, and WSE's been behind us on this for years as they've been patient with us as we've tried to get our priorities straight. So we're really grateful for this conference. We're grateful for all the partnership here. We're grateful for the team at WSE. We're really grateful for Wyatt Nelson, who's helping aggregate the supply, for Brian's work, the partnership we've had with Sara and talking about how we can get this regenerative center stood up in Big Timber, and Gina's inspiration. She's worked on this on a nationwide scale. So lots has happened in this last year. Still more to do to get it brought to market, but we're confident that we can make an impact. So that's a little bit about our background. Thanks.
Well, thank you all for sharing some of the exciting things that are happening in the business community. So if we can have our two students come up that are running microphones around. We'd love to entertain some questions both online and here in the audience. We got a lot of time for discussion and conversation here, so let's take the information that these businesses have provided and come up with some good discussion.
In your pet food product, is that all 100% grass-fed then?
I was told to use the mic, so I'm going to stick to that. Yes, that's what we're going for, is 100% grass-fed. And that is something that we think fits the regenerative practices. We have like a more in-depth sourcing guidelines, but we are looking for grass-fed, and that also is connecting to what the consumer is willing to pay a little bit more for, right? They see that as an impactful. So yes, that's what we're looking at.
Wondering about how this goes back to the rancher producing the cattle or the livestock. What's one of the challenging things right now, for instance, is maybe it's not such a big challenge, but I think for the grass-fed market is you're actually better off selling a 1-year-old steer right now than you are a grass-finished steer to a branded program for what the branded programs are paying, compensating ranchers for, just because the commercial market's pretty good right now. So I think that's a challenge. When you're doing your programs, how does that compensate the rancher to give them the incentive to want to take that extra risk of taking that grass-fed animal to all the way to fruition to being finished?
I can address this a little bit, and I'll kind of address it from two parts, from the aggregation center that we're putting together that right now we're calling the Grange. That could change. And one is on the grass-fed standards. We're looking at the grass framework right now, which currently is the same finishing standards as grass-fed, but we're getting feedback. And if you're a producer, please find me, because I will get you on my computer and we'll fill out this survey together. But we're providing feedback right now to that to have more flexibility on finishing. So there are so many ranchers who are doing really creative finishing methods, where whether it's sprouted grains or grazing on cover crops or beer waste or whatever it is, we want to be gathering that input to be looking at possibly enhancing that standard. So that's one piece of it. On the other half, what we learned here last year, and one of the reasons we're trying to do this aggregation, is at the big processors, they're breaking even on the meat and they're making their profit on the other half. And so we believe if we can aggregate and create value for every part of the animal for our producers in Montana, and we get the processors trained to consistently cut and package to come to this aggregation center, that we'll be able to offer a premium above the conventional market. So we hope to be offering that premium, but also equity in the company so that there's ownership, governance, voting rights associated with that. And also, hopefully, at some point, we'd love to figure out more financing, like forward contracts. So we're really looking at it being really producer-centric, that the producer has to come first in this, or it's not going to work. If we don't get producers bringing us, selling us their animals, there's nothing there. So that has to be the very first priority, is making sure it's a no-brainer for the producer to sell into this market. And I think as we start aggregating and, this Montana regenerative supply chain, which I really view as regional, not just Montana, but probably, Wyoming, Idaho, kind of just being able to get this region aggregated. Then what Gina's working on, then if a big national retailer is coming, they can aggregate from us, from the Northern California aggregation, from a Southeast United States, from a Texas aggregation. But the idea is, if we are gathering all these pieces in a consistent way and have these consistent buyers, we will be able to offer a premium above the conventional market to make those practices worthwhile for you. That's the goal in this. Is it's a no-brainer to sell into this. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
it's just not profitable to sell a grass finished animal to, or as profitable right now, I should say, as profitable to sell a grass finished animal into a branded program, because those branded programs are not paying any more of a premium than, I mean, you can sell a yearling for more than a grass finished animal right now. Why go that extra year, the extra cost? So it's just something that needs to be thought about in the whole scheme of things. But those are some of the things that are going to help, is having market for the offal, having markets for the hides, and those extra things, that for sure. And I appreciate that. So I appreciate your thoughts on that and your efforts to do that. I'm just raising like the big question as from the ranching side. Yeah. So thank you.
One of the things that I'm hoping will shift this issue right now is the nutrient density, because I do believe, like what we've seen, we've been doing a lot of testing of this, of meat, and we see that when, beef is finished in this way, that it is more nutritious, that people will pay for extra nutrition, and being able to tell that story. I think that this is ultimately going to be the unlock here.
I think the economics is a huge driver for us at West Paw. Like, if you think about the risk that you're experiencing in the market, and you're asking yourself, another year, another labor, another input for a whole another year, for what gain? So when we look at the waste stream that's coming from the offal right now, like, there has to be an economic upstream push back of, we're actually going to fund the purchasing of what can be considered a cost right now, and instead of a cost, having it be an asset, as it should be. And the way we got to like where we were last year is there's simply not enough processing capability in Montana to get us the organ meat we need. So I guess we just can't do it, right? Would be the natural conclusion. But by thinking, all right, two things are going to have a breakthrough for us to help create more economic reward for the rancher is, one, let's figure out how we get the head count down so that we can have processors in Montana actually supply us. And that's a breakthrough in change thinking towards a stick. And then secondly, how do we restrict our market, which isn't actually what we want to do. Our company is set up where we have customers, and when we tell them about our new product, we tell everybody. And we're going to have to change that. And that's worth changing to say, which markets are we going to sell this Montana product in? Those two changes, I hope, will allow us to start rewarding the ranchers for good product at a smaller scale. And then as it grows, it shows both, hopefully demonstrates economic value to the ranchers, which is so important, because you can't run ranching on faith alone. The economics are important. And then secondly, as we continue to grow that, we can show that there's maybe more market for those animals than there is right now. But I know there's a lot of risk there. And so we're hoping by starting with the head count that we're at over this next year, and we'll be processing throughout the year, that there's evidence that it could help. I think that's one. If I was running a ranch today, I would say, well, show me the evidence, right? And so that's what we're going to try to do with our program. It's a great question, though. Thank you. Right over here. If we can get a mic right up front here. Oh, great, Chris. We're good. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a question directed to you, Spencer, but I think all three of you will be able to answer it. I know what an S Corp is. I know what a C Corp is. I have no idea what a B Corp is. Could you explain that?
Yes, I can explain that. Very, very good question. Thanks. So a B Corp doesn't change your corporation status from a tax standpoint or a legal standpoint. A benefit corporation is the kind of company that has gone through a rigorous third-party assessment to validate that the company is achieving certain measurable points on a third-party scale. Those points come from how you treat your workers, how you impact your community, and how you impact the environment. And those are the three big buckets. Then you think about the fourth is smaller, about like how the company's run, so like governance. And then the fifth piece would be how impactful is it for customers. And so this movement started about 15 years ago to help convince the consumer and even the supply chain that there are good companies that are doing the right thing to help impact the economy positively. And so that's where the certification process came up for B Corp. But it does not, we're still a subchapter S corporation, to use the tax code. We're still a S Corp, but we're a B Corp as well through that certification process. The B stands for benefit. It's companies that are trying to certify that they're benefiting more than just the stakeholder of a profit-driven company, like the shareholder. So that's what B Corps are. There's also this law in Montana that we were helpful passing about, 7, 8 years ago, called Benefit Corporation Law. And that is a status with the Secretary of State in Montana, where you can have a company that is filed as a benefit corporation. We are also a benefit corporation, means that you file with Secretary of State a claim that you are seeking more than just shareholder profits. You can have a dual mandate, so impact to maybe workers or community or some other thing, as well as shareholder profits. So that's the quick run through. Be happy to share more. Anybody else want to jump in on the B Corp?
I have a quick question over here. Just wondering on your, what you call offals, what is considered offals? I'm a little confused on. I know probably liver, heart, kidney. I don't know.
I'll let Spencer answer this too. We're looking at all parts of, we're going to be creative in this and we're still figuring it all out, but we're hoping that everything has value. But we've been not really calling it offal, but organ meat, tallow, hides, we've been more splitting it out that way. But I'm not sure for what you're gathering, if you're looking at it differently.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And Brian could probably speak this a lot better than I could and anybody else here. But I would say, from our standpoint, we're looking at lung, heart, liver, kidney, and spleen would be our primary needs there.
Intestines?
We really don't have the ability to do that here. We've had some in my industry in pet, like the tripe, green tripe is huge, but we don't have the ability to really handle that here yet.
And also, I would like to ask, as you're sourcing your offals, are you, because you're in the pet industry, you're not under as much regulation as if you were selling offals for human consumption?
That's a good point. So like there is different regulation in pet. There sometimes feels the USDA is actually a good thing because it's nationwide. In the pet space, a lot of the regulation is state by state because it's considered animal feed, and it's even more complex. It's one of those crazy things about our unified market is sometimes very ununified in this nation. And so that's one of the challenges we have, is how to classify this, and we have to register every flavor of every treat in every state. And they have different labeling laws in every state. So I'm a big fan of USDA because it allows us to help bridge some of those divides. If we weren't a nationwide brand, we would probably care less about that. But so we're looking for, and especially as we want to open up into Canada, we need to have them processed to the human standard.
So I'm sitting here thinking, what about nutrient density of said offals in relationship to human consumption? When I think about that, I think there's more nutrition in the offals than any other part of the beef.
I can speak to that from the human side. We've had one of the national retailers approach us because they want us to help create a human snack that would have hopefully liver, but maybe other organ meat, because they're finding that demand. And I know we talked a little bit about this last year, but on the Bumble Root side of the business, we're creating a separate meat side now. We create a hydration drink that has, it's all dried food, real food. So one of the ingredients is dried coconut water that has a lot of potassium. And especially women around hormonal health have really found nutrient density and the number of minerals and trace minerals to be their tipping point of what they're buying. And that we can't stay in stock because of that market. And what these national retailers are finding is they're trying to create products for that market, and they're looking for a snack with liver in it that they can sell to women concerned about hormonal health specifically. So you're right on point there. It's like they're looking, the retailers are like, no one's brought this to us yet. Like, what can you create that has this? Because the market is ready for it.
There's your competition.
I have a question. The animals you're currently sourcing, what kind of, imagine it sounded like you're still working on it, but what kind of a third-party verification or verification you got to have on the animals you're currently using?
So for the animals we're looking at, we're using the GRASS framework that will be discussed here today. And that gives some flexibility as to certification. So for example, you could be Land to Market and Audubon, or you could be GAP and something else. And if you meet those requirements within that framework, then you could be guaranteed that, you know, these companies would be able to purchase from you. So what we're trying to do is get the agreement on the industry side that this is, you know, the framework we're going to use. And the brands really like it because it constrains the supply if you're only going to use one particular certification. So this menu approach, as long as it's high integrity and we're all looking at the same outcomes, that just gives this consistency that the rancher knows what they can do, that they would have a customer at the other end, and also that the brands know what they're asking farmers to do. So we saw that that was like something, you know, in bringing the product to market at Applegate, I just really saw that that was a huge problem. And when, in working with my partner, Zach, I saw that when Applegate and Timberland went to a network of farmers and said, this is what we're looking for, it was very easy for them to just accommodate us because they knew if they do this, they're going to have a market.
So you're looking for a two-party verification or?
Third-party verification of some sort, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a list of that made up yet? Or?
Yeah, that's, she's if you could talk more to that.
Yeah. Great question. Yeah, it's a combination, as you were saying. So we have a list, ROC, EOV, Greener World. For example, what you were saying, EOVs combined with American grass-fed. And I'll speak this afternoon. It's in the works, and we're actually really excited to be able to work with producers because we're going to be able to quote unquote research, but really means work with you and see what's working and work with the industry so that we can all agree that there's this integrity behind it, but that it's fluid and that it's not, you know, a one size fits all.
Exactly, because so much of what I've seen in working at Applegate is how many of these certifications are really not, they don't make sense a lot of times to actually how farming is done. And we have to, and it doesn't make sense on our end to just be so constrained that we can't move out of that. So that's why I'm really loving this new, more like, I don't want to say fluid, but more like a menu approach to things, more flexible.
And what we found too is that, I know I'm repeating myself, but the retailers are really liking this. So we've brought the grass standard to Whole Foods, to natural grocers, and that they're like, oh, a solution, because they weren't going to have enough product to label regenerative just from EOV or just from ROC. So they're really liking this umbrella approach too, that they can say, oh, this is grass certified. They let us handle like what that means and that fluidity. And please find me to do the survey because we're trying to provide feedback back to them to make this work for Montana, because right now the finishing standards are AGA, which we have a lot of producers here who do, but we're trying to be even more inclusive to include some of more of those creative finishing, still, not confined feeding and still very much within the spirit of regenerative, but just to make sure we are encompassing, the different creative finishing techniques that you guys are using. So please find me so we can give them the feedback. The retailers are waiting for us. They're wanting to launch as soon as we can figure this out. So
I'll second what you were just saying too, is like the expansiveness of the GRAS certification as well as the buy-in from retailers will be a huge unlock. And I spoke about this last year up in Lewistown, is that I know that certification can be fatiguing, right? And what's cool about GRAS is that you can maybe choose one from a whole list of programs that work. And from a branding standpoint, when we're sitting down with a buyer who's like, you guys sound like you're trustworthy, but is there a third-party certification behind this? When GRAS comes along, and if there's enough supply in Montana, that'll be an easy yes. And that increases the ability to grow supply and lock in the demand.
And for Montana, what's really cool is you have Christian here from Audubon, and the Audubon Plus is one of the ways to get the GRAS certification all encompassing. So, you have Christian that can come around to the ranches, get you certified straight there. And that's a huge benefit for Montana ranchers wanting to do GRAS.
Yeah, that's just like I said, that's why I've asked, because I've done some of the certification, and if we don't do a little research for what you guys want, that what works, pretty soon we're trying to fill out 6 different certifications just to get you the product you want. And we might have spent a lot of extra energy doing that when maybe 1 or 2 would have worked. That be nice to know which ones work.
Yeah.
So
There was a question online too relevant to this, so I'll ask you. And just so you all know, we apologize for all the acronyms we're throwing around. EOV, we're AGA. There's a whole bunch of, there's acronym soup in government. Well, there's even greater variety of acronym soup in the certification. So it is really confusing. Everybody thinks they can come up with the right certification that the consumers care about. But when I ask companies, what do the consumers really want to know? They don't know. I mean, you build a brand, you build a message, and you try to target consumers and you try to hit that mark. The question online was, what certifications have you used? Which ones do you prefer? Which ones have worked in the past? So kind of give a little bit of experience about that whole certification. I think just going back, organic was kind of the first one that really became well known and I guess adopted. And there are a lot of organic products that you can buy now. There have been a slew of others that have come along. So what certifications have you used? And I'll ask you this question just to put you on the spot, but what do you feel like today with your consumers they really want? What do they care about the most? What do they want to differentiate? How would they spend their dollars knowing more about the product? And then who bears the cost of the certification? So sorry, there's a whole bunch, but we have a lot of time. So just
For our customers specifically, for Bumble Root and then the meat brand that we will be launching, it's nutrient density, and they're connecting that to regenerative. So it's a regenerative label in general. I don't think they don't seem to have so much of a care of which certification is under that. But the way they get the regenerative wording on the label is for the retailers to agree to a standard that does work, which we're really advocating for GRAS because of its flexibility and that it's an umbrella approach that producers can choose to just have 1 or 2 certifications, not to have every single certification. And it means that we're not picking a winner either, that it lets all of these different verifications and certifications figure out what they are, grow in their own way. And maybe one of them will become more of a winner, but we don't feel like we're in the place to pick that. And that's where GRAS gives us that certification. On who picks up the cost of the certification. There are climate smart grants right now that are covering that we're involved with, along with what you guys are working on. That's one of the main ones. I know with Audubon, there's some of that covered. within the state, there's grant money out there with the center. We're trying to collate that for producers so we can basically offer them like, well, between this, and this, we'll have you covered. And we can also coordinate, like for Whole Foods for example, they need GAP, which is on top of grass. Okay, so if we're going to have this GAP certification, can we get you one of these others that gets the GAP certifier out here, but also share it with 3 other ranchers in that day so that we're really splitting that transportation and hotel cost. So we're here to help coordinate for that too. So if you're interested in coordinating on any of those, let me know. We're trying to piece that together to lower the cost for everyone so we can get those certifications, verifications done with the least time and money for the producer.
No, just that, I know certifications, there's a lot to this, but I mean, I'm hoping we come to the day where the outcomes are what people look at, because if we can prove, for example, that like whatever you're doing is leading to more nutritious food, then keep doing those things. Because so much of the certifications are practice-based and one size fits all. What I'm hoping we can do is through this new regenerative, like kind of like wipe the slate clean and be like, how does certification really work for everyone, for the farmer, for the producer, for the retailer, and what makes sense to them and their business and how they're farming, as opposed to this one size fits all. So I think moving from checking boxes, like boom, 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 we follow all these practices, to looking at outcomes. What are the things that generate that kind of outcomes that we want to see? So I'm hoping we move more toward that.
I agree with both of them, and saying that, from our standpoint as a brand, it's less about now. I think the movement around organic, Chris, was something we were big on back in the 90s, and that really helped our brand because people trusted it. And as we've seen this shift, consumers are recognizing that organic isn't like always the right solution. And I think as we think back to Sarah's point around regenerative, having like this nutrient dense profile, and that nutrition aspect, whether it's people or pets, is really important. And so if we can see those outcomes, to Gina's point, creating a better product, and there's a framework around that it allows the ranchers to have some more opportunity to choose a program that works for their land and their practices. As a brand, grass is really a good fit because it's really broad in that way.
I also want to add something that I thought was really interesting in Applegate when I was working there. What we saw is, just how many of our consumers were actually buying online. We have a lot of young consumers, and they were purchasing the product online. So much of what we do, and we think everyone's learning from our packaging, so many consumers are not even looking at our packaging anymore. If you look in, you go to a Whole Foods, I don't know if it's everywhere, but it sure is in the places I go, in the East Coast or West Coast. It's Amazon pickers in the aisles mainly, and not even customers. So I think we have to think differently about how we actually market our product. We can't necessarily just assume that they're going to know what we're doing by what's on our packaging. So I think too, it's like a time to rethink this right now. I think also online, there's more of an opportunity for deeper storytelling, which is good. So things are shifting a lot.
I just want to add one piece to that. I think in addition to the certifications and verifications on the labeling, the information that's coming out from the nutrient density studies are going to be really important. I know a number of us were at an event this summer where we got some of the initial results from some of these nutrient density with regenerative beef studies coming out, and it's really amazing. And there are already claims that are strong enough that could be put on packaging, because the FDA and the USDA are very stringent about what kind of claims you can make. But the current studies coming out, for example, on omega-3s being triple in regenerative what they are in conventional meat, that is a strong enough claim that can actually be put on packaging or be put. A lot of the packaging rules still apply online. Even if you're digitally marketing, you can't make claims that it has to be extreme enough of a claim to be able to make it, basically. And that is one piece on the omega-3s where the data is strong enough that we're gonna start being able to label that using this meat. And I think that's gonna be huge too.
And just one more thing, something, over the years, we have done many focus groups and studies. I mean, that's what brands love to do. Like they are looking at every little thing they put on a package and how consumers respond to it. And I just thought it was funny that year after year after year after year, after all that money put into focus groups, the number one claim on a package was always local or natural, which are things that, especially the word natural, like really, we know that that can mean nothing. But that on some level means something to people when they say it. And local is, when you break it down, I can understand why that means something, because some of these certifications are very abstract. Local means I'm supporting people in my community. I'm supporting, things I know and things I care about. So it does carry a lot of weight, which I think is just an interesting antidote.
Hi, I have a question for Spencer over here. I'm just trying to understand if you could educate me a little more on I have to get my mind back to the question. On the scale that you were working on, if I understood you correctly, you said 700 to 800 head is what you're working with. And first question is, what's the time frame on that? Is that a week, a month, a year? And whatever that is that allowing you to source your product from one or a couple processors in a region versus the entire state? I'm just trying to understand the scale.
Thank you. Yeah, so sorry for not being real clear on that. That's a great question. So I'll back up and just give a little context. So we went to market with like a single protein product, like long beef or bison long. We did heart, beef or bison heart. And those single proteins, the annual demand on that is close to 5,000 head. And it's growing at like right around 40%. So that number's going to keep clipping along. And so that was the first challenge. We're like, well, how do we even do this? With the stick, what's neat about that is because we're using more pounds of product in there, incorporating multiple organs and some trim. I think we're 30% trim right now, 20% trim. So that is reducing the head count on an annual basis to somewhere around 700-800. And while that is more than goes through Pioneer Meats right now, that's where the organization like Sara starting up to aggregate supply is going to be huge. And we're using a gentleman who's done this work in the restaurant, and he worked for grocery up in Bozeman to aggregate supply. So he's going to help us do that aggregation from other processors. So Old Salt will be a hopeful, sizable processor for us. And so we can try to get from all sorts of folks who are doing this work. Wyatt's work would be to standardize around the way in which those organs are cut and processed, because we want to give them back to Brian's team knowing what they're getting. Right? Is it processed in a similar fashion, cut in a similar way, frozen? So what's happening with Cole and his team up there as they build out Helena, we want that product to look very similar as it comes down to get put into our product down in Big Timber. So we need that standardization. But yes, we are trying to involve as many processors as we possibly can. And we just have to have one point of production for us. And so as that grows, I think the point we're trying to get across in my mind, in our company's mind, is that we can start smaller, and then as that grows, we can bring more people, whether that's ranchers and processors, into that as this grows, because we have lots of market opportunity. Great question. Thanks for letting me clarify.
Spencer. This question was kind of for you, and
Sure.
It just kind of got answered over there. But I guess my first question was, how do you decide which processing plants to use? But then beyond that, how does the rancher know if he sells, or he brings 40 head or 20 head or 10 head to the plant? how does he know that his organs or his offal is getting saved and segregated to know that he's going to get paid for those? And then who actually is paying who? I mean, you're paying the rancher directly, or I guess I don't quite understand how that part goes.
That's a great question. So one of the outcomes that we wanted was to make sure that the rancher gets paid for their product, right? Instead of it being a cost, how do they actually get income for that? And so the economics of that we have to work out, because we've got, like I said, we got this gentleman Wyatt helping us aggregate, and so he's going to be working with a couple different processors and bringing it back to Pioneer Meats. Brian, I could put you on the spot. Do you know kind of what your thinking is, right? You want to share that?
So there's 27 pounds per beef on the average of heart, lung, liver, kidneys, and spleens. And if the processor is able to get $1 a pound to harvest that and trim it to the specs that we need, and we're willing to pay $3 a pound, that gives $2 a pound to the producer. And if your processor has some integrity and will keep your stuff separated, if you fit the criteria of the regenerative and grass-fed and everything that is set up, then that money would go right back to you. And there's not a producer around that wouldn't take an extra $54 a pound or per beef off of the grass-fed beef that they're producing. And so that's a 5% reduction in waste as well. If you look at all the offal and the fat and bone scraps, and with what Sarah's talking about, we're going to even reduce that more using the tallow. There is a bone market. I mean, what everybody's talking about is hasn't even been scratched. The hides, yes, you can salt a grass-fed hide, and I don't want to be negative, but until the price comes up and gives the processor the incentive to salt the hides and store them until they're aggregated to be picked up, that probably isn't going to happen for small processors like ourselves and in Montana. But once that happens and we can get a little bit of enthusiasm going, buddy up with others, and we can get that going. If you were to get another $10 a head out of your beef because of the hide that now we pay to throw away and to compost, now you're at $64 a head extra profit per beef. And the one gentleman, if you don't mind me mentioning, asked about price of cattle or high. Yeah, it's all-time high. A person has to, if you're going to engage into this, you got to be in for the highs and you got to be in for the lows. Coming in and out of a market, and I'll get into that next hour, isn't going to work for anybody. But we all have to make money, and we can't lose money every year, and we can't. Damn, I wish I would have made an extra $100 last year that I could have sold them as a yearling instead of a fat beef. Sometimes you got to ride the highs, and hopefully there are not too many lows.
Are you familiar with the biospectrometer? I guess could you address how you think that might work into certification? And maybe you could explain it a little bit better than I could, but anyway.
I think, are you speaking about the handheld device that can decipher nutrient density? Yeah, that to me can be the game changer for all of this. If a consumer can hold in their hand a technology that's the size of an iPhone and be able to scan a product and be able to tell which is more nutrient dense, then the price premium has just been justified. So yeah, I'm hoping that I don't know any more about it than it exists. And I think that I'm incredibly hopeful that that technology can advance to the point of honestly being on your phone. and being able to read the food. And again, I think that we're like right on the precipice of something like that. And that will, like, in my mind, completely shift this market.
Yeah, just a couple points is, the technology exists. I think what they're working on is it has to be calibrated for like
Yes.
carrots and
Yes.
and has to be calibrated for beef. But the other really upside of that is it's not only telling us the nutritional density, but there's no other way you can get that nutritional density but
Right.
from good soil.
Exactly.
So when you're buying it, you're doing both. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really hopeful.
Me too. That's the most hopeful thing out there to me, because it completely eliminates the ability to greenwash. You cannot fake the outcomes of that nutrient density. And I do also think that it will, once, when you think about investors who are investing in systems right now, investors that are interested in investing in, for example, my company, if they know that they can get a benefit by, hey, if we have that knowledge for the calibration, then we can actually further differentiate ourselves in the market. It's easy to get the investment to get that calibration done. So, and I don't think it's even that expensive. From what I heard, I mean, relatively speaking, it's not that expensive to do this calibration on the entire food system. Yeah, super exciting.
Just to follow up to that from online, there were some questions about nutrient density, where the science is at, what studies are available. Sarah and Brian and I got invited to an event at a ranch in Big Timber, a family that's helping to sponsor some of this research. So Sarah, I don't know what you remember from that, or Brian, what we learned there. But to me, I'll just give my 2 cents. It sounds like a lot of that research is really preliminary. They're not sure which markers or which nutrients or enzymes are the best indicators of what's healthiest for all of us. So not to go too far down a rabbit hole here, and Gina too, I'd like to ask you, so we're talking about the consumer being able to do this, but looking more at the corporate America, the national brands, is there movement toward a label that would, or an indicator, a metric on a label that we could have that says omega-3 this, or whatever those things are. So maybe we could just spend a little bit of time talking about the research, what we know about nutrient density, and what could go on a label, those kind of things.
First, I'd recommend people sign up for the emails from the Bionutrient Institute, Bionutrient Association. It's the same group by Dan Kittredge, but he's been releasing information on this and the status of some of the different studies out there. From the event we went to, the one that really stood out was that 3 times the omega-3s, which is huge. But there were a lot of other minerals and vitamins that directionally were showing a lot of promise and just required more research. So I'm not exactly sure when those are going to be public. There's been initial findings that have been released publicly. But I think within the next year or 2, there's going to be a lot more breadth and depth to those studies that will allow more claims to be made.
Thank you. My question is a little bit different. I can see aggregating the retailers and the packing plants, but I'm having a little bit of difficulty figuring out how you aggregate the ranchers themselves. And I thought maybe Sarah, you had some idea. It's like, you go to the local brandings if you went to all of the organization meetings, you would still just touch a tiny part of the ranchers who are out there, and some are interested in Regen, and others are terrified, and some just don't care. And I live in Wyoming, and my job is to try to, unite some of the people who are interested in transitioning to regenerative ag. And I find it kind of tough to figure out where to find them.
I mean, what we're doing right now is working with WSC, for example, who has a great network of the ranchers that are doing this work. So that's kind of been our first, connection point in to the ranch. So it's events like this. It is the different ranch events. It's the ranchers that Christian's working with through the Bird Friendly program. So you start to kind of figure out who's already doing this, and we're finding that's the path of least resistance right now is sort of those ranchers who are already doing it and just might need a little extra support to get that final verification or certification that will be needed under GRASS to be part of our network. As far as the ranchers, who might be interested, I think they're starting to come into these events too. And as they're talking to their extension agents, as they're, talking to their neighbors, we hope that they're seeing, oh, my neighbor's getting paid a premium. Why? How are they doing this? We want to sell into this, aggregator too. So we're hoping that by starting by the people already doing it, that it'll start pulling, people who are maybe more on the edge in as well.
And I would say from my experience, a purchase order is the quickest way to aggregate. So if you come, and that's honestly, I don't even think it's worth sometimes trying to aggregate into a network if at the end of the day there's no payment. So starting with the payment of this is what we have, this is what we're looking for, this is the standards that we're looking for. They quickly, I've just always found that to be the case. They just quickly, will organize themselves around that. And the idea is to get as many of those purchase orders up front as possible.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Sunny. I really appreciated hearing from you today. I really admire the systems and the concept that you're developing. And it's kind of a follow-up question to that one. And Sarah, you touched upon it a little bit. Given the fact that we do have, the Climate Smart program availability, I work for an organization, and we've got support for those who are in that field of like entering in and testing it out and trying to become regenerative. What do you see as them in the vision of what you're doing? And with the idea that, like I hope is that a conference like this, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, has that many more of them who are interested in being part of the system.
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I mentioned, I think it's getting the first movers first, and then our hope is that everyone else kind of comes along. We have all the first adopters in this room right now, and with their success, they'll pull other people, their neighbors, and people around them up. I don't think we can make anyone do regenerative, but if the economics work and they have support around them to get to that next level, I think we can help get them there. And, between these different Climate Smart grants, the other half processing part of, I think we have some of those financial benefits right now available to producers who are wanting to experiment. And one thing we've talked to a lot about some of the conventional ranchers is like, would you be interested in pulling out part of your program and just testing? You don't have to switch over your entire ranch right now. Like, we can help support you through these Climate Smart grants and other resources we have to experiment and see if this works for you from an economic standpoint. And we've had a good reception to that. I think a lot of ranchers are like, if it economically works, why not? Hopefully we'll have those numbers for you soon.
Gina, I wanted to follow up really quick on that question about nutrient density. Given what we know and the status of the research, with your experience with the national brands in corporate America, Do you see that as a possibility that that would be on a label someday? And what might that look like and when? I know those are a lot of unknowns, but
Yeah. They're all unknowns, but every company that we're working with is working on that. And that is what they see as being the ultimate differentiator for their brands in market, right? If they can prove that out, they're going to win. So they're doing whatever. It's just going to be legally. That's what we have, lots of lawyers, legal teams working on that to see if that can be proved out, because for example, our attorney brought up when I was still at Applegate, well, you might measure one batch of meat. Is that the same for every single animal coming through there, right? Like, it gets very, very in the weeds and very complicated. So I don't know if we're going to be able to have this like one size fits all label that's going to cover nutrient density. I do think though that the opportunity for storytelling around this, there is an intuitive connection that consumers understand, believe it or not, between healthy soil, healthy food, healthy people. It's an intuitive understanding. I'm actually surprised, even in mainstream magazines right now, we have people talking about the microbiome and how our personal microbiome mirrors the soil's microbiome. So there is a new level of consciousness right now around these concepts that I think that there's a way to tell a story, maybe that you don't have to be so like certification oriented of, getting this to be like, for example, just telling the story of one of the ranchers that we work with, that he has, 20 varieties of perennial grasses, and like showing those in a visual. Like we said, here's monocrop kind of grass. Here's, in a regenerative system, you have all this biodiversity. All that biodiversity leads to healthier food. Like, there is an intuitive kind of understanding. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I just don't think that we're going to get to like that one size fits all silver bullet thing that you put on a label to explain something like this.
So I'm Todd Barkley and chairman of MRA. So I would just like to put a plug in for the regenerative ag side, because a lot of the extra income you will probably see is some of the practices that you will incorporate through using regenerative agriculture, whether it's short duration grazing, high intensity. And so I guess I really appreciate your concept of giving us an outlet to just sell more commodity to you, because a lot of what we will see in our capture of profit is in the increase chest. I mean, you'd agree with that. Through doing some of these regenerative projects, you'll see that increase in your production. But then how do we share that to a community that will appreciate that extra nutrient dense food? I mean, there's always going to be a place for commodity-based agriculture, right? But this community-based agriculture through regenerative or grass-fed or organic. So a lot of questions on where's the extra income, but I think once you incorporate them practices, you'll see your extra income through your production increase.
And to that point, I would argue that demand is there. We have these national retailers who want to start these products and get them on the shelves faster than we can aggregate right now. So that demand is there. There is this messy middle that we're needing to figure out right now to do that. But the demand is there for a premium. When we were pricing for these retailers for the products they wanted to do, we put quite a bit of a price increase for regenerative versus conventional in there, and they didn't bat an eye.
And I'm working right now with, believe it or not, school districts. And I mean, granted, this is California, but school districts in California, K through 12, looking for regenerative beef, and also stadiums. So that's, to me, is really exciting.
And as a follow-up to that question, when you look at profitability for a ranch operation, you're looking at practices and how they reduce your costs, increase your productivity, possibility of going into the food system, marketplace, and opportunities for premiums there, but also combining that with markets for carbon offset payments, and the emerging ecosystem services markets that could be providing additional income too. So that's all part of a profitability scale that WSC is considering. So there'll be some presentations later about the new emerging markets in carbon and ecosystem services too.
Lil, I got a real random point that kind of brings your carbon conversation full circle. So when you think about like a brand trying to market and tell the story, and to your point, Gina, like there's more opportunity online to tell that story than on pack, and so like how to tell the story that's most impactful, right? So we knew nutrient dense is going to be a big part of that story. Carbon sequestration, big part of that story. And what's interesting is that at West Paw, most of our product is actually a petroleum-based product, right? We are thermoplastic injection molders, right? That's what we do, is we work with plastics. And so what's really cool about that is that our plastic company, who we source from, is a private family-owned American company. And we buy little pellets and bring them all the way into Montana. And we've been working with them on sustainability for a long time. And we launched a couple of years ago an ocean-bound plastic to get plastic that's going to end up in our oceans into literally dog toys, right? Long story, very, very short. This ranch east of Billings, out near Huntley, is owned by that family, and they bought it for carbon sequestration. And they started doing the work thinking we're going to plant a lot of trees. And they did the research and found out that it was actually, grasses are actually even better. And those of you who grew up in this area probably know the ranch. Shellhammer's had it for a long time. And so they're using those pivots now to, instead of cut grass, to put their cattle out on. They're now offering West Paw carbon credits based on their regenerative agriculture in Montana. So you got a ranch in Montana that's creating regenerative beef. That plastics company is now deciding to sell their own carbon credits, particularly to European customers, instead of buying them on the open market. Who knows where they go? Who knows how good they are? In this way, they actually know what they're selling, and they're offering it to a company like West Paw as well. So when you think about ranchers in Montana, we have a lot of opportunity to find ways to layer income. And I just want to come back to how impactful that can be to the ranchers working the land, but it can be impactful to a brand like us to go to our customers who would think, carbon neutral plastics would be a possibility. Regenerative ag in Montana might make that happen. So that's a random story, Lil, but I had to bring it back how impactful Montana ag can be.
I think we have time for one more question.
I have the mic, but I already spoke once, so if somebody else has something. It was more of a plug. I think, there's a lot of talk about the verifications and all these third party, and I think that we've went about it the wrong way, and we've trapped ourselves into just a big paperwork system. I think that the people that are doing it right should get rewarded with less paperwork, and we're creating a simple product. I mean, it's a God-made product that we're selling, right? I mean, more natural as it gets, right? And I think the people, like I was talking to Anna earlier, that if you buy implants, maybe the paperwork should go to those people. And, let's simple. It seems that'd be easier to keep track of in my mind, but maybe I'm saying that just because I'm on the other side of it. But maybe this reaches the ears of the right people, but something to keep in mind, I guess. So sorry for taking up time with somebody else.
Any other questions out there? All right, well, thank you. Oh, one more. Go ahead,
Dan. Two-part, hopefully quick. Sounds like beef is the main focus. Is there any looking at other animal products? And then, you guys are trying to get this to scale, which is great, but that eventually leads to large players taking over, kind of like did in the organics and whatnot. So do you see any ways to protect the smaller producers that can pivot quickly, but then maybe $10 a head, is it really worth it when you bring 10 instead of 1,000 head? Thanks.
We'd love to add in lamb, goats, bison down the road. We're starting with cattle because it's the most established, but we'd love to build those out. We have a lamb lentil bar formulated that's delicious. So I really want to do that. And then as far as it's something we've thought about a lot, like how do we structure this in a way that doesn't just get bought by one of the big companies? And if it is that a bad thing? And how do we protect this being community focused like we want it to be, to retain the mission that it has, the values? So we've been having a lot of discussions with attorneys and different people, talking to Cole Old Salt about what they've done. Like, how do we make sure this stays producer centric, but still has a financial return? And so we've gone back and forth on what those different structures are. Is it a B corporation? Is it a co-op? And we've decided at least one part will be a co-op, so that producers have ownership and they'll have voting rights within that. So the decision of how this moves forward, if Hormel comes in and is like, I'm going to buy this, are there enough protections in it that keep it what we want, but that's not necessarily a bad thing? Or do we decide as a group, this is still very beginning, that is never going to happen? We're going to make sure we protect that it's always going to stay a community-owned organization. So those are all the discussions we're having within our steering committee. And if you'd like to be a part of the steering committee, please let me know. It's a great group. I won't call out everyone in this room that's on it, but this is a real collaborative effort. This is not mine. So we'd love to have people's input, participation. There's a lot of momentum, but a lot of work that needs to get done, and I can't do it all. So if you'd like to be more involved, we'd love that.
And for public good provisions, we're starting with beef, but we want to go to all species. We've made a definitive decision that we do not want to be sold, and we're structuring the company so that it cannot be sold. We want to create supply chains and give corporations access to them. So we're looking at that perpetual trust model, among other things. And what I'm finding is that there's not a model out there for what it is that we're trying to do. So it's been a lot in figuring this out. But the ultimate goal is to have a food system that functions almost like a public utility. That is the big dream. And for 5 years now, I've been looking for, this idea has been seeded in my mind. I've been thinking about this for a long time. For the last 2 years, it's been talking to investors. For the last, since I left Applegate, really doubled down on looking for investment and also walking away from so much investment, because I'm not okay with, I got the best advice from the founder of Applegate, who said, when you do this, there's only one thing you need to be concerned about: whose money you're taking. I'll help you vet them, because if they don't understand, it's hard to sell to an investor, hey, I want you to invest in something that you can't get a 10x return on, right? It's like, I'm looking for the believer who really wants to see a new food system. And I've found a couple of people that, that have now rallied around this idea. But to your point, this has to be built of, by, and for the people.